a very strict family, like your parents are quite strict to you and ask you to do a lot of things, you will feel like you are never good enough. You don't deserve any empathy or self-empathy. The fact is, I had an argument with my parent or with my partner, and the opinion is they hurt me by their words, or I hurt them by their words. This is opinion. But of course, sometimes the boundary of opinion and facts is unclear. Realizing the reality is the beginning of self-awareness.
Hello guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of Certified Overthinkers. Now, this episode is very special to me because we are going to talk about how personalities are evolved, what you can do in order to be more self-aware. And this is something very close to me actually as well, because for past few months I have been trying to rediscover myself, and this topic has helped me quite a bit. Now, I'm gonna say a word and I want you to think of a scenario, or what is the first thing which comes to your mind? Empathy. Now, if you're thinking that empathy is how do we feel about somebody when they are in a certain situation, I want you to take a pause. And now so the point is that you didn't think about yourself in this scenario. And this is exactly what we are going to touch in today's topic, which is self-empathy and self-examination. And for this episode, I have a very dear friend of mine, Dory. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
It is such a pleasure to have you here. We have known each other for quite a bit time now, and I know we always joked about that, the way we have our conversations going whenever we are meeting. We always thought that just put two mics there, and then it's always feels like that we are in a podcast.
Yeah.
And now today we are actually doing this.
Yes. It's quite interesting, to be honest, because when we are having normal conversations, we didn't expect there would be audience, but
Yes.
for some reason we think like maybe our conversation can be of some help for someone behind the camera.
Right.
So maybe it can be interesting.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So welcome to the show, and maybe I would start if you can introduce yourself to the audience, what you do, and for how long have you been here. It would be nice for the audience to just get a little bit of background.
Okay. So my name is Dory, and I'm from China. I have been living in Poland for more than 2 years. I'm a legal counsel, so I'm a lawyer. That means sometimes my way of thinking, my way of expressing myself has some certain influence by my legal education background and also by my profession. So I really like to think about things in a very systematic way, and I really like to discuss about my ideas. So it would be very good to have a friend like Shiva that we can discuss about things like that.
Yeah. So I wanna, because I think we have touched this topic during our conversations whenever we are hanging out. So let's start with the very basic, right? What is self-empathy?
Self-empathy. Actually, this is a new idea coming up to my mind recently, and I just brought up with you to discuss. But we haven't discussed about it.
We haven't,
yet.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it
Okay.
will be our first conversation
Yeah.
about it. So I think self-empathy actually means you understand your feelings about certain things, and you actually be a friend of yourself. When I'm talking about friend, it means you will show your empathy to yourself. You understand the circumstances of your certain actions or behaviors, and you understand the logic behind those actions, and you try to accept your feelings toward those actions or any consequences toward the actions. So this is my feeling about this word.
Okay, so basically be your friend
Yes,
in a way.
yes, but this way is different than you have real friends in your life, because you are one individual. You
Yeah.
have like two roles instead of one body. It can be a little bit different.
Okay. And when we talk about self-empathy, so how do we show it to ourselves?
I think like my approach to that is to first you understand your environment,
Okay.
and then you understand your behaviors, certain behaviors in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
And you understand your feelings, your emotions when you are doing those things in that environment. So when you have all this information about all the things, you will understand the logic and other people's responses towards your actions.
Right.
I know this is quite abstract.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need a context.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand. So, what are the kind of environments where like somebody will show self-empathy towards themselves?
For example, you have a, I don't know, argument with your
Mm-hmm.
partner or with
Okay.
your family, and sometimes you just drop the phone and feel angry or feel quite nervous about something, about the conversation. And at this moment, if you don't have the idea of showing self-empathy to yourself, you might immerse yourself into that emotion but don't know what to do and feel anxious about what happens next. But if you have certain level of self-empathy, I feel like you can be calmer. You understand,
Right.
okay, my emotion at the moment come from this conversation with someone, and this is just a stage in my life. And after this emotion passing
Right.
or flowing into me, and then I just let it go, I can come up with some other way to deal with the conversation, the relation,
Right.
or my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it to some extent it helps you to deal with your anxiety.
Right. Then, how is self-empathy different from self-awareness in that case? Because self-awareness is also the same, that you are familiar with your emotions,
Yeah.
you know what is exactly happening, you know the building blocks of it, and then you're trying to understand and work on those things. Anxiety can be part of it. Then how is it different?
That's a very good question. So I think self-awareness is more like a neutral circumstance. You're trying to gathering the information, okay, how I feel, how I discussed this thing about with this person. And the next stage will be you show self-empathy to yourself. Like it's like give yourself a hug when you feel hurt or feel
Right.
nervous or feel vulnerable.
Right.
So this is less neutral, but it's more like care about yourself. This is how I feel.
Okay, so because I remember a few situations, or let's call it scenarios, where I had to say to myself that I need to be empathetic towards myself, like feel the emotions, but it just happened. You can't do anything about it. You tried your best,
Yes.
right? You just
Yes.
tried it.
Yes.
There's nothing you can influence it. So I think I can very much relate to it. And also, do you think like these traumas or how you were growing up, your childhood, does it affect a lot of your self empathy when you are an adult?
Definitely, I think so. For example, if you grow up in a very strict family, like your parents are quite strict to you and ask you to do a lot of things, you will feel like you are never good enough. You don't deserve any empathy or self-empathy because you always have a space to work on. You always have something to improve, right? So sometimes it brings more anxiety because you have this like self-side scenario to yourself that you don't deserve empathy or encouragement or any good
Right.
positive
Right.
responses. Yeah. But if you're living in a family where your parents or your family members always show, oh, good job, and you're already doing good things, you will learn those ways to treat yourself from your family members. And when you really feel you need some self-encouragement or self-empathy, you can do it naturally. So I think it definitely relates to your childhood memories and experience.
Interesting. So, family situations, how you grew up as a kid, it affects a lot of your self awareness and self empathy.
Yeah.
But I'll take example of mine. Like I grew up in a very tough environment when I was a kid. Until last year, I had no idea about what is happening with me. I was very unconscious about things. So somebody who is unconscious towards themselves, right? How can they figure it out that or build this self empathy towards themselves? What are some of the key points they need to look into themselves or understand in order to develop this self empathy?
I think this is like a very big questions because
Yeah.
you have so many elements
Yes.
involved. Like you have your family trauma, your past experience, like you are in a very, how to say, early stage to try to tackle this new world, right? So I think, like from my personal experience, I would say first you have to differentiate the fact and the opinion, because sometimes you feel like, okay, the fact is I had an argument with my parent or with my partner, and the opinion is they hurt me by their words or I hurt them by their words. This is opinion. But of course, sometimes the boundary of opinion and facts can be very unclear.
Right.
This is possible. But at least I think we should put this idea in our mind that there's a difference between fact and opinion. And we have to be more aware of the facts to try to understand what is really happening. This is first step. Because why? Because I think like realizing the truth or realizing the reality is the beginning of any kind of self-awareness. You have to know what kind of environment you are living,
Right.
what kind of things you are experiencing or you were experiencing. And then you can analyze those information. But at least you should have a good information base.
Right.
Yeah. And then after you gather certain level of data, you can start to, I think journal is quite a good tool. Yeah, because human brain is not good at processing so much information at the same time. So if you just write down what happened today and how I feel, and then you can just start to compare my feelings and the reality caused me to feel in that way.
Right.
So this is like self conversation.
Self reflection.
I think self is next stage.
Okay. Okay.
It's next
So
stage.
this is a self talk, let's call it.
I think in that stage, you are still trying to gather information and analyze information, and
Okay.
then you can have higher level of examination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you're trying to get in touch with your emotions,
Yes,
right?
for sure.
This
for
is
sure.
what we can call it. Okay. And then so people are doing journaling. I myself I do journaling. It helped me a lot, and I actually recommend people to do journaling. So
You should share how do you journal.
I actually journal twice a day.
Okay.
I do it in the morning,
Okay.
and then I do it at the night.
Okay.
So during the morning, I'm trying to set myself up for the tasks, what I want to do during the day.
Okay.
But also before that, I try to write down what are my feelings that day in the morning when I wake up. So I try to write those down, and then if something is bothering me after I woke up, I try to write that, mention that as well, and then I try to give myself some tasks which I have to do, and then I just leave it. I don't remember about the task, but actually unconsciously I do them. Then at the night, after I have done everything, and this is my time to go to bed or chill, then I write down how was my day, what
You're going to
exactly
review
happened.
all the tasks.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And so first I will start with my day. What exactly happened with me, right? So if something happened, let's call it that I had an argument with somebody, I will mention that. I will mention the full scenario, what exactly happened. And then I'll try to think that if I behave this way, why did I behave it? Maybe I have something still going on inside me. For example, let's call it that I'm afraid of something, and then I reacted in this particular way during this situation. The next day, next morning, I'm actually giving myself a task, and I'm trying to figure it out that why were you afraid yesterday and you had this kind of behavior in this context. So then I'm trying to write that down, put it in my brain that okay, sometimes I'm being afraid of these things. So this is kind of helping me. But I try to understand the full context of the situation, because during the heat of the moment you can't understand what exactly happened. So you need to reflect it. Then I write it down and try to understand it. I'll give you a situation. Uh, no, I will share a situation which happened to me some time back. So I realized that whenever I was talking to somebody, it's very personal. I even discuss it with my therapist. So whenever I was talking with anyone, whosoever, I was mentioning that I did this, I did that, I was doing this, and this is what I did for my friends. There was so much I was coming. I never realized it. And then one day I was like, wait, why am I writing so much about I? I don't ask about the other person sometimes. I'm just keep on mentioning. And then I realized when I was writing it down, that I am lacking acceptance.
Of what?
That I was never given the validation when I was a kid. That, oh, you did this.
It's like
It's great.
compensation.
Yes, it's great that you did. So my parents, they never said, oh, you passed this exam. Fantastic, amazing. They never said. So now, like unconsciously, I developed this habit that I did this, and so that the other person can say, oh, really great. So I'm lacking that self-acceptance.
Yeah.
So I was writing this down, and then one day it just hit me. I was like, why I'm doing this? And then I wrote it down in my journal, and I was like, wait a second, like I'm missing acceptance. Like I never got acceptance from my parents when I was a kid. I discussed with my therapist as well, and more or less I was correct.
So to summarize, just in your journaling, when you're in your journal, you are writing like I did this, I that. You mentioning a lot about yourself, right? And in your conversation with your therapist, you also have a lot of I.
There were a lot of I's. Like in
Okay.
journaling, like of course it happens I, but when I was talking to other people as well,
Okay. Okay.
let's say that even if you can recall your and mine conversation, there will be majority of the time I'll be talking about myself. I did this. Like of course I will ask you, but most of the time this was happening, and then I understood that okay, this is what I was missing. So was something like journaling is helping me a lot.
Okay.
Realizing the unconscious thing which I'm not aware of, and so that's why I do it twice a day.
Okay. Actually, your habit of journaling is quite a good example,
Yeah.
explaining what I mentioned, the steps. Like at least you should write down something bother you, because if something happened in a day and it
Yeah.
bother you, it actually means you don't have enough digestion of the information happening in that scenario, right? So journaling helps you to gather the information. And then another thing you are doing is to write down your feelings
Yes.
about those things happened. So this actually reflects what I mentioned, that you should gather information and then you should write
Okay.
down your feelings toward those things.
Hmm.
And then I feel like I'm not sure why they're mentioning too much about yourself is a bad thing, because it's your journaling, right? It's
Yeah.
about your life, it's about your feelings.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
don't-
like when I
yeah.
said this, I didn't mean like in journal it's okay, because I'm expressing myself in this notebook, so that is completely okay. What is not okay, that when I'm speaking to somebody and then I'm talking about I, that is not okay. Journal is completely fine, and this is when I realized that I was talking to somebody else, and then I was mentioning I am doing this, I am doing that, and this is this is what I meant.
So I have a question about that.
Okay.
When you're talking about yourself, when you're talking with anyone else, like your therapist or your friends or your potential partner or someone you're dating with, if you don't talk about yourself, what do you want to talk about?
I want
Like-
to talk about the other person.
So
What's
they're
happening
talking
in
about
their-
themselves.
Yeah, but I should be asking. I shouldn't be talking about myself all the time,
Why?
because this is a way somebody shows interest in someone as well. Like I can't be talking about, oh, then this means like I don't care about you, right? I'm just trying to release my feelings to you. So you are kind of like somebody who is absorbing my information. But am I absorbing your information? Am I taking your information as well? No, because I didn't ask you how you are doing. How was your day?
Okay,
Right?
I think there are two things here. First, do you think when you're mentioning a lot of yourself, it's a compensation to your childhood?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if you're doing that, I think it's not a bad thing. And the second thing is, of course, you want to show more sympathy to your friends, to the person you
Yeah.
are talking with.
Yeah.
You want to show more attention to their life rather than just focusing on yourself and
Yeah.
talking about your shit, right?
Yes.
This is a good thing, and I think you're doing it good, because when we are discussing anything, I don't feel
Yeah.
like you are just talking about yourself. So no worry about it.
Because
Yeah.
I'm very self-aware about this thing now, because now whenever I go on a streak of like I immediately, there is something in my mind telling me stop it, you have
Okay.
to ask about the other person.
Oh, you already have this requirement to
Yes,
yourself.
I already have
Oh,
this
okay.
self-conscious now.
Okay.
I built it. Yes.
Okay. But let's go back to the compensation part. So recently, I had a friend, and the friend shared me with some of his previous life, and he was liking a lot of validation, recognition from his parents. He was kind of ignored when he was a child. So even he's like in his 40s, 30s, he still wants his mother call him I'm a good boy.
Okay.
Yeah, this is what he wants particularly. Yeah,
Interesting.
and those kind of lack of validation, of course, influence our way when we become adult. I think it's for sure, and I think there's no problem of compensating that by yourself. But the most important thing is the limitation. Just like the requirement you set for yourself. When you're talking with someone, you definitely want validation from them, but you ask yourself not to focus too much on yourself. But I think this is a good way. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that before we self-examine ourselves, we need to have self-awareness?
I think so. Even very entry level.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very important. It's like you're taking a screenshot of where you are at the moment, and then you will see where you want to go next.
So self-examination is a byproduct of self-awareness. Is that right?
I would not say byproduct. I would say it's still like a tool. Self-examination is a tool and
Okay.
a way of living. And self-awareness is a status. You are self-aware of,
Okay.
of
So
things.
self-awareness, we can put it here, and then you have pillars, which is first will be self-examination. So at the end of the day, your goal is self-awareness, but examination is a pillar, is a tool to achieve self-awareness.
Yeah, it helps. It helps.
Hmm.
But you can also say self-examination is a daily practice.
Okay.
Yeah, and self-awareness is your
Hmm.
goal.
And how can you self-examine yourself? I know journaling is one, we already talked about it, but what are the other some techniques or daily habits which somebody can implement in order to self-examine their self and achieve the vision of themselves, the future vision?
That's a good one, because I will share a very personal way of doing that.
Okay.
So we can see that sometimes some like people tell you that you don't need to listen to other people's comments about yourself. You don't need to care about people's opinion about yourself. But actually, in my case, I would be very happy and open to hear about other people's comments to me,
Okay.
whether it's good or bad. Of course, sometimes some people will give you very negative feedbacks and you will feel sad or angry about it. But in general, I would be very open to hear anything like that, because I feel like those comments or opinions from other people are very valuable source of data to me. And that is my own job to process the data and
Right.
try to pick up what I want to absorb what I want to use as the base for my self-examination. Yeah. So I like to hear different voices. I think in our conversations, I quite often ask about your opinion about a
Yes.
certain way I'm doing things, right? Also about how I'm approaching some certain challenges in my life,
Yeah.
right? So I'm really grateful for my friends and all people like my colleagues. They're very open to provide me with this kind of feedbacks, because sometimes I feel like the risk is no one is willing to tell you something that you can't know with your own perspective. This is a very risky position, and I try to avoid that, and I try to create a atmosphere, a vibe with my friends or my families that we can talk about anything. Yeah, so
Right.
this is my personal approach. I like to open up the resources that I can get information.
Okay, so you should be open to feedbacks.
Yes,
Then
but
okay.
don't let certain resource of data judge you or dominate you. It's just one resource. It's just one source of information. Like you shouldn't be lazy of relying on one source of data to define
Okay,
yourself.
so if you get the same feedback from multiple people,
Yeah.
then basically this is true.
Yeah.
And you should now try to assess the information. But if you are getting this information or feedback just from one person, could be wrong,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
multiple sources.
Yeah. It's quite risky to
Interesting.
just use one resource to
Yeah.
decide.
And what if this kind of feedback on or information is coming from your closed ones because they have known you for a very long time? So
That's a good question. That's a
Yeah.
good question, because we can't avoid that. The important people in our lives always have more important influence to ourselves, right? For example, my mother. I know sometimes her opinion is not that, how to say, neutral, but I would definitely listen to her. I will think about what she said. This is inevitable. But still, back to the you have to always go back to your base. Like what kind of thing you want to achieve in the end of the day. You just want to listen to that person, let this person to control or dominate your life, or you want to have your own way. If you
Right.
know this is your goal, other people's voices or opinions, even when it's coming from someone really important in your life, it can just be there once, not as always.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this actually brings me a topic because I think a lot of our viewers, they might be confused because this very much sounds similar to self-criticism. So how do you differentiate between self-examination and self-criticism?
Okay. So we were talking about the possible criticism from other people, right? Some people might give you.
I mean, you can. I mean, what I'm trying to say here as well. I'm not saying like in general what people are sharing about ourselves, but to ourselves, like
Okay.
within ourselves, that I wanna achieve this, I wanna achieve that, I wanna achieve that. Maybe you are being very self-critical at this moment that you're pushing yourself. So how do you differentiate that this is a self-examination or this is a self-criticism? For example, like maybe I'll take the same example of me talking about I. Maybe I'm criticizing myself too much. Like you said, it's not a bad habit, but I was being self-critical at this point of time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how can someone identify the differences between self-examination and self-criticism?
Okay, let's ask ourselves one question first. What's the goal of criticizing something or someone? What's the ultimate goal? It's only the behavior that you are criticizing someone
I
or
think it could
something?
be anything.
Such as?
It's just not behavior to make it better or
That's
at
the
least be
point.
aware about it.
Yeah, like first you're aware of the situation, and then you think about, okay, how should I do that better? Right?
Okay.
This is the way of criticizing. This is the goal of criticizing.
Right.
So, you shouldn't just be controlled by the procedure, not the goal. You should know that you got criticizing comments from someone, in the end of the day, you get these comments just to improve yourself. But if you let this negative feelings of receiving some negative feedbacks dominate yourself, you are so much away from the ultimate goal of improving something.
Okay. So when I say the word criticizing, the first thing which comes to my mind, at least, is that it's a negative word.
Okay, you think criticize is negative
Is a
word.
negative
Okay,
word,
okay.
right? I'm not sure about others, but this is my first assessment.
Okay.
Is self-examination also a
I think it's
negative? It's a neutral word.
yes. At least to me. Examinate, which means you're using certain standards and certain rules to check things. But criticize means you're harshly blaming something.
Then criticism, you're trying to understand your flaws.
You mean self
Yeah,
criticism?
about yourself, right? That I'm
Yes, or
criticizing the
maybe
way I behaved with
yes.
this person. This is a self-criticism.
Yes.
And self-examination will be, it's a bit different that, okay, so I'm just trying to relate it. So after self-criticism, could be that there is a self-criticism, you do self-examination.
Yeah.
Is my understanding correct? So these two are not the same thing, but different things at the same time. But before self-examination, you have a self-criticism, and then you try to make a plan for yourself on how to be a better person.
Okay, so I think in general, I try to avoid self-criticize.
Okay.
But sometimes I will do that. If the
Okay.
situation is so bad, maybe I just realize, okay, I did such a bad thing. But in the end of the day, I think we should turn to self-examinate more than self-criticize. Because self-criticize definitely brings a lot of negative byproducts. Like,
So it's just how it sounds. The word criticism, when you say criticism, is negative. When you say self-examination, it's like a positive word, kind of.
it's kind of harsh. It's kind of hard because sometimes
Okay.
language brings you the emotions related to that, right? So I would say like we should waste less energy in blaming ourselves, but say what we did and how we've improved.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about self criticism and self empathy. So do you think like if we are being empathetic towards ourselves and we are following self examination, the tools which you have provided, such as journaling, self talk, do you think that this can actually heal your traumas and emotional wounds which you have?
I think it can be helpful, but I haven't explored that part very deeply. So
Okay.
it's to be continued.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it can heal, but it's a scar which will always be there, but at least you will be self-aware more,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And what about mindfulness? Is it something which can be a tool for self-examination,
Mindfulness. What do you
like
mean?
meditation, as an example, where you're taking time for yourself, sitting in a peace and trying to understand the behavior. So it's kind of self-examination. It's because
Yeah.
right when I sit with myself in silence, then I'm trying to understand what exactly I want, where I want to be, and what is happening, because there are so many voices in your head. So is this something which can help people as well, meditation?
I think it definitely helps because there are so many ways to do self-examination. You can just do the journaling or doing meditation. Anything can make you feel you're in peace, and then you can
Right.
start to have the energy or the mental volume to process the data you received or you accumulated. It can be very useful approach.
Okay, and what are some of the questions we should be asking ourselves to be more self-aware and more compassionate towards ourselves.
I think like my approach is this. Like back to what I mentioned before. First, you should realize what is happening, what is the reality you are experiencing. Of course, there's a caveat that you can only see the world or the situation from your own perspective with limited information. This is caveat because we can never see things holistically, right? So you should try to differentiate what's real, what is happening, and now to try to be neutral about those information. And of course, when you're receiving some other perspective, information from other perspectives, you can put it in your database, but take some time to process it if the situation is too complex. That's the first step. And then try to feel how you are feeling about situation. This sounds weird, but I feel like not everyone can do that in modern world. Sometimes we try to ignore our feelings. We try to suppress it.
Yes.
We try to
That is
hide
very true,
it. And we try to deny we are experiencing something, right?
It's something which is really bad.
Yeah.
Suppression.
And to be honest, I'm still trying to explore that. I think I'm more aware of my feelings, my emotions at the moment. Like I will always ask a question to myself: are you tired now? Are you angry now? Or are you trying to pretend you are not angry, but actually you are angry now? Yeah. And do you have any good tips or like how to do it better? How to be more aware of your own emotions better?
Still difficult for me. But I know I'm very much in touch with my emotions and feelings now, at least. I look at the situation first. What is the situation? Why the situation demanded certain emotions from me at that point of time? Because I know I can't assess in that moment itself. But later on, I will try to self-examine it and understand why it brought up these emotions, and then be more empathetic towards myself, if that makes sense. So I had a recent situation where like I felt a little kind of unhappy about myself, and then I took a moment of pause. I was like, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is driving me, and what can I do? Can I do something to change this emotion? Yes, I can approach it in a different way. Like, for example, like if this person made me unhappy because of these things, then maybe I need to change a bit of my approach on how I communicate with this person.
Okay.
Yeah, so it makes you feel better.
But do you remember the moment that you realized you started to be aware of your emotions?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
It had just happened
It
recently?
just happens now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, whenever I am angry even, or which I don't get angry very easily, it just hits me, why are you getting angry?
And then you start to ask yourself the question.
Immediately, even sometimes it happens during the moment itself. Like, wait, hold up. Why are you getting angry? You need to calm yourself down.
Yeah.
Ask
This is
in
a
a
good
different
tip.
way.
This is a good way that
yeah.
you ask yourself this question.
Yeah.
How are you feeling now?
Yeah, exactly.
And you should be honest to yourself.
Yes.
How am I feeling now?
Yes. And for me, I'm gonna emphasize again that journaling is something which has helped me here, because when I'm writing in my notebook, I'm being very honest. Because you can't lie to yourself. You know, at the end of the day, you know what you are doing, what you are saying, you know about yourself. So yeah.
Yeah, and I also want to emphasize that I feel being honest to yourself is really important.
Yes.
And if you're doing this, as always, good. Please keep it, because it's very dangerous to not to be honest to yourself. Because whenever you're so used to lie to yourself, you're living in a very dangerous way that you might. Maybe you can just mention some bad consequences.
You will be unhappy, first of all, if you're lying to yourself.
Why?
Because you're trying to, before that, you're trying to suppress your feelings. and you are lying that no, you are okay. But actually you are not okay. You need to be aware of your feelings. This is something which is very bad and which is very dangerous, because it can lead you to depressions. It can lead you to be more anxious or have anxiety, and
Sorry.
can rip you off your goals.
But I still feel like there's something in the middle. We have the beginning, we have the ending. But why not being honest to yourself can lead to those bad, negative feelings about yourself? Why lie to yourself can cause those consequences? I think this is very important to what we are discussing today.
Why are we lying?
Yeah, because everything we are doing is based on the real base of your life. But if you get any information which are fake, which means the whole system won't work efficiently, right?
I think could be one of the reason that, like, a lot of things can come, because a lot of past things can affect this this situation. You always wanna be something. You have an imaginary persona of yourself in your mind, and you wanna live that persona, and that's why sometimes actually you lie.
You are trying to pretend
You're
someone you are
trying to
not
pretend.
being. Yes.
Exactly. We are approaching the end.
Okay.
Now, I want to ask you one final question. And as of this episode, I actually want to implement this question to most of our podcasts. So, as you know, the channel name is Certified Overthinkers. So, I want to ask you, are you an overthinker? And if yes, what are some of the tips you will give it to people who are an overthinker in order to tackle overthinking?
Okay. Can we just define overthinking first?
Overthinking, I mean, that you go into the loop of thinking, and then it comes to, at the end of the day, self-sabotaging, just in the loop of the thoughts. I know overthinking is something which will be always there, but the extent or the limit of overthinking is something which is more concerning.
Okay. So, which means, like, when we're overthinking too much, it can be negative.
Yes.
But if we limit or we know where to stop, we can actually take advantage of this habit to make it to become self-examination or something more
Right.
neutral, more positive, and to help ourselves, right? So I definitely was in a state that I overthink too much, a lot in my life. But I didn't see that so bad, because I think you have to go through certain stages in your life that you
Right.
are ruminating everything in your life and try to find out a new way. Yeah, I don't regret doing that. But now I would say now I definitely find more peace in my mind, in my brain, that I can think in the way I want to think and try to find out some solutions to my life rather than just wasting my energy.
Right.
Yeah. And I think another important thing is you have to be aware if you are thinking without a stop. Sometimes when people are overthinking, actually they couldn't control their brain.
Yes.
They couldn't stop. When they're sleeping, they're thinking. When they're
I was one of
working,
them.
yeah, I was one of them as well. Yeah, it's like you don't have enough power or control that you can think. But sometimes it's really bad for our mental health. So I think meditation or journaling can be a
Yeah.
good way to sort out your thoughts and help yourself to release the additional ideas in your mind.
Right.
Yeah, it's like you're in a not very kind of efficient, systematic way to do your thinking. Not to do it randomly without any order. Yeah, I don't know if I
Okay.
answered your question.
I think more or less
Yeah.
you did, but yeah, the important thing which I noted for myself, like, be aware of when to stop and stop wasting your energy
Yes,
on something.
and like
Yeah.
the name of your podcast, certified overthinker. What does it mean, certified? What's certificates?
We always overthink.
I mean, I know,
We
I
have the
know.
certificate to overthink always.
Okay. I started in another way. I think
Yeah.
like if you're certified, if you have certificates
Certificate.
of that, actually means you can control it, not
We can.
let it to control
Yes,
you,
we can.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's actually a good name.
Yeah. Jory, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a great conversation. I learned a lot, and for sure our viewers have learned a lot as well. I'm gonna put the notes in the description as well. So thank you very much. It was such a
Thank you.
pleasure to have you, and thank you for sharing your views.
Thank you for the invitation and the
Thank you very much.
discussion.
Yes, thank you very much. And guys, thank you very much for tuning with us. If you enjoy the episode, make sure to subscribe, share, and like the video. And let us know what did you learn from this episode in the comment section down below. Thank you very much and have a good day.